Hello again, I'm Robert Fithen. Just 3 videos left, including this one. We are almost there. We have entered the top 30, ranking 215 albums from the year 1992. Thank you so much. Again, I know I say it a lot, but I sincerely thank you for joining me on this very long journey. I know it's a lot of video watching. It was a lot of video making and a lot of music listening, but definitely a labor of love because I had a lot of fun doing this. Otherwise, I wouldn't have done it, to be honest. But let's get right back to it. Head right back out to the freezing cold and the snow for number 27. All right, you know him, you love him. His name is Prince, and he lets you know that on the first track of this album. This is called Love Symbol or something like that. It came out in 1992, just like, you know, all these albums we're talking about today. And yeah, his name is Prince, and he feels the need to express that, tell you how funky he is. He used to just show you how funky he was, but now he's got to tell you all about it. Then a rap guy comes in and raps over it. It's a upbeat, energetic way to start the album. I don't know if it's my favorite Prince track ever, but then you get Sexy MF, which that's a little more, you know, interesting because it's this sweet little like boppy jazz number with these super explicit lyrics and, you know, that title, of course. So I think the contrast there is interesting and actually works pretty well. So yeah, Sexy MF is that was actually a single. So yeah, I don't think they actually said the word motherfucker on the, I don't know what they did with that. Probably just edited it out or something. But yeah, so Love to the Nines, we get a nice love song. You know, Prince on here on several tracks doing his thing, talking about how he's the best lover ever, and there's no comparison. You ain't been done till you've been done by Prince. And he lets you know all about that. He's funky. He's the best lover ever. It's cute at this point. It's like, oh, Prince, man, there he is again, talking about what a great, how great, you know. It's just, it's almost comical at this point. But it's not really charming. That's what it is at this point. It's charming. This is another one of those Prince albums that I never heard until just recently. I totally abandoned Prince right about after Sign of the Times. I discussed in the 1991 series about how I'd never heard Diamonds and Pearls all the way through because I didn't like a lot of the singles, so I never investigated the album. Turns out it's a pretty good album. Turns out this is a pretty good album. And I don't know who's picking the singles to play, but we didn't need that 7 song to be played over and over again on MTV with Prince and the gold microphone that's also a gun. Prince trying to be all gangster and I'm gonna smoke them all and all this kind of stuff. That was a complete turnoff. And I mean, I was never into like gangster rap and all that kind of stuff. So it was a total turnoff for me. Never investigated this CD, but there's definitely, the 7's the worst song on here. Just know that going in, if that's one of the only ones you've heard off of here. But you get the Sweet Baby, and I'm gonna take it to the max, and I'm gonna give you my love, you know, and all that kind of stuff. And, you know, you get this woman trying to interview him. I think her name's Vanessa. She wants to interview him, but he's being, you know, kind of cagey about it and hanging up on her and telling her he's 325 years old and an Egyptian god or something. There's some kind of theme running through here. I didn't really pay much attention to all that nonsense, but he's an Egyptian. He's got a 16-year-old girlfriend or something like that. I found out that the girl on the phone trying to interview him is actually Kirstie Alley. Not sure what her and how those two paths cross, but yeah, Kirstie Alley is on this CD playing a part in like 3 different little segments. So you have that. You have Damn You, which was, you know, it's actually a love song. And then you have this rock opera type thing at the end where he goes into this big long thing, and it actually is kind of clever. It's kind of interesting. That's where he brings out the thing about being the Egyptian god, and he's got the 3 chains of gold, and he's going to melt him down. And you know, it starts off sounding more like a 60s type pop thing, and then it goes into more of this like big opera type thing. But it's a nice way to end this. It reminds me of like some of those albums from like The Who, like a quick one where they end with that big long thing about the engine driver cheating on or the woman's cheating on her husband with the engine driver. I'm Ivan, whatever that is. But it reminds me of things like that. So that's pretty cool, actually. 3 chains of gold. Now, of course, by the end of the song, he's telling the girl that, you know, if both of us have to go, you're going to go first, and I'm going to make sure of it. And I'm just like, girl, this motherfucker's crazy. He is going to kill you. Okay, just know that. So not the first time I've given that advice to a girl that I've known, but you know, so just Prince is getting a little crazy at the end of this. So just, you know, it's just like, calm down, Prince. The Sacrifice of Victor. Maybe his name was Victor during this whole thing. I don't know. I just know it's a fun album. Should have listened to this a long time ago. Love ballads. He's the best lover. He's funky. His name is Prince. And it's also, but his name wasn't Prince. His name was this symbol, I think, at the time. Which, by the way, one of the great things about CDs is if you know, unlike a record where you damage the cover, it's damaged. If you crack the jewel case on a CD, you just replace the jewel case. But on this one, this symbol thing is actually on the jewel case. So you need to take care of your Prince love symbol thing there, because if you break the jewel box there, that's going to be really hard to replace. So just know that. But yeah, a decent CD. I was really surprised by this. I'm just going to keep checking out all the Prince that I missed and, you know, just keep going on with that. 215 albums, I am ranking them. I am deep diving into the year 1992, and thanks for continuing with me on this journey. We are up to Nonsuch, the album that came out that year from XTC. This one is one of those albums that goes on and on and on for over an hour. That's the way we did it in 1992 when we made CDs. But this one is pretty delightful, almost all the way through. There are 17 tracks on here. It does kind of overstay its welcome just a little bit. I think it would have been better as more of a 13 or 14 song album, but you know, that you give people more than their money's worth. You got to give it up for XTC for that. But yeah, this follows up Oranges and Apples. I reviewed that one. I'd never heard that one before until like last year, and reviewed that and was like, this is great. This is very... you know, kind of all over the map, and, you know, touching on psychedelia and stuff like that. I thought that was a great trip. This one kind of reins it in a little bit. These are more basic pop melodies. There's a little bit of variety in here, though. It is XTC, so they are more on the alternative pop side of things. They never quite broke through to the mainstream in the US anyway. This album, I think, only went to like number... I don't know, 97 or 95 or something like that on the Billboard charts. So, I mean, they never really got their dues here in the United States, which is pretty sad, because this is, like I said, a delightful album. Starts off with the Ballad of Peter Pumpkinhead, which is probably the most popular song in America from this album. A lot of people making connections with the lyrics of that to the assassination of John F. Kennedy. I think they had a video that pretty much solidified that. But yeah, greatly, smartly written song. A lot of the lyrics on here are very smartly written. They're very political, some of them. They do get into the lovey-dovey stuff, and she's a girl that'll make your bamboo curl and stuff like that later on. Not a big fan of those. But they aren't afraid to put it out there. They aren't afraid to be, you know, kind of delicate as well, and kind of fragile, like on, you know, Humble Daisy. That's a great song about this just humble flower that he's made a friend with. Going to lay on, you know. Maybe he'll push it up later on when he's underground, so that's pretty cool. Dear Madam Barnum, he's not going to be your clown anymore. He resigns from that. You've got the second track on here where he's just talking about this lovely bird singing. Just really delighted by this bird. And he doesn't get into fine art or fine wine or the upper crust of things, or get too deep into things that he just wants to hear this beautiful bird singing. And I can definitely relate to that on certain days. On a lot of, as I get older, I can definitely just want to hear that bird singing. I don't care about all this other nonsense that's going on. I just really appreciate the fact that that little bird is out there. But yeah, so great lyrics, you know, it's just song after song after song. Towards the middle, it does start to lag a little bit. It gets a little too, you know, the songs have a quirky kind of feel to them musically. They do go in a little bit of a different direction on some of them, but it's not quite as wide open as Oranges and Apples, but still a great listen. And then, like I said, towards the middle, they start to more sound like almost stage musicals, like songs like Rook, where, you know, it gets very, very theatrical. But they bounce right back a couple tracks later. You know, War Dance, he changes up his vocal style, and the lyrics for that, just great. They're not afraid to be British. Maybe that's what kept them away from the US mainstream. They're not afraid to mention things like Coronation Street and Fleet Street. Wasn't Coronation Street's not, isn't that like a TV show or something? I think that's a soap opera or something like that. No mention of the River Thames, though. Or Leicester's just Eyster Street. There'll be none of that. Hello, England. Thames. Anyway, yeah, so yeah, it bounces right back with that song, and then it gets right back into its groove with the following tracks. Ends up with a song about book burning, and how a book burning smells like human hair when it burns in the playground. Again, we're in 1992 now. Bands are not afraid to be political. Bands are not afraid to speak about what's going on in the world or their country or whatever. Like that doesn't really happen a lot in the last 20 years. And so we didn't listen to the bands. We should have listened to the bands, man. And we just let it get out of control. And now look at us. We got all hopped up on that corporate rock of the late 90s and just started bashing our heads and singing about cars and girlfriends again and partying and, yeah, trying to be extreme. And now look at us. We should have listened to XTC. But, yeah, great stuff on here. It does get a little... I'm not a big fan of their lovey-dovey stuff, Holly up on Poppy, and Then She Appeared. But some people like that stuff. So, I mean, a little something for everybody in here, especially if you like the alternative pop and the stuff that's just a little bit, not too much, but a little bit out of the mainstream, at least in the U.S. You definitely need to check out Nonsuch from XTC. But, again, my favorite is still Oranges and Apples. Okay, so we are up to Faith No More and Angel Dust. Used to play this all the time back when it was first out. It's interesting because I've actually heard the Mr. Bungle album, the Mike Patton side project. I've heard that more recently because I've been reviewing, because I was asked to review it when I did that whole shout out thing to ask people to give me albums to review, and then I reviewed it for the 1991 video. So I've actually heard that album twice, and I haven't heard this in decades. I think you're supposed to do that the other way around, since the Mr. Bungle is kind of under the radar thing, and this was the big commercial popular release. But this is great. I've always liked this one. I don't know much about the other Faith No More albums. I mean, I have the CD for whatever that one was, Album of the Year, I think it was called. Of course, The Real Thing is the one with Epic on it. That was the big song that broke them through. But I think this is probably still the most popular one. And I got this on hearing the, what's the big song on here? Midlife Crisis. You menstruated hot. The vocals on here are somewhat obnoxious, but they don't go over the line. This is, like I said when I was reviewing the Mr. Bungle album, this is like, the polished professional version of that. And it's still wacky and way out sometimes. I mean, you're not going to rein Mike Patton and crew in and make them proper and spiffed up and ready for Sunday church. I mean, they're always going to be way out and somewhat obnoxious and all kinds of musical things going on and sort of like a kaleidoscope of sounds. And that's what this is. Starting off with Land of Sunshine, you got the kind of a carnival feel to some of the music, similar to Mr. Bungle, but not quite that extreme, obviously. And you got the organ going on in a lot of songs. You don't have these sounds in a lot of music from the early 90s. They definitely had their own thing and just went with it. The sampling they do is completely different than a lot of the sampling that was going on. They're not doing drum loops and the typical stuff. And when they do stuff like similar to that, it's totally their own sound. So that's one of the things that drew me to this band. I love the bands where they're their own thing. And you can tell right away that it's that band before the vocalist even comes in. And Land of Sunshine is, what starts it off, and you can definitely tell that. Caffeine was another great song, upbeat. They got the craziness kind of reined in a little bit on that one. Then Midlife Crisis, of course, the big hit. Without me, you're only you. Yeah. That one and A Small Victory are probably my two favorites on here. The one about the hierarchy spread out on the nightstand. You still won't hear! Maybe people still don't hear. But great. lot of variety on here. A band that's, professional. They know what they're doing, but they're not afraid to cut loose and get a little bit in the weeds every once in a while. And you do have a little bit of 90s extreme on here. It was 1992, so you got to be extreme a few times, just like the cover art here. You've got the aigrette. Is that what that is? An aigrette. On the front, beautiful blue background, and then you turn it over and you've got, butcher house scenes because we got to be extreme. Faith No More, Angel Dust, ending with this instrumental Midnight Cowboy that just kind of lets you down like a parachute coming out of the clouds. You're going to be let down easy. And of course you have track titles like Crack Hitler because it's the 90s. All right, time to talk about one of my favorite rediscoveries while doing this project, and that is the band Warrior Soul. And I really raved about their 1991 album. It was this one, Drugs, God, and the New Republic from 1991. And their follow-up from 92 is called Salutation from the Ghetto Nation. Now, this one is just a touch, I won't say watered down. It is though. It's a little more safe, but just a smidgen. I still prefer this one, but Salutation from the Ghetto Nation has its moments as well. But overall, as an album, I think the other one is a little more aggressive. But this one, there's certain tracks on here that definitely don't pull any punches. Second track on here called Blown, talking about a ticket to the White House is not a blowjob for the poor. The rich man gets a suck off because the president's his whore. You know, I mean, this is the kind of band this is. Very, very political, very, very exact and specific. They don't shy away and try to beat around the bush. And, well, we can't say that, so we're going to act like it's everybody and it's all politics. No, they are very dead aimed. And that's one of the things I like about this band. But they're not one of these, like, you know, acoustic guitar, you know, singing about the struggles or whatever. These guys are hard rock with a party, aggressive attitude. And they got the party tunes on here, too, just like they did on the first one. They got songs called, like, they got a song called Ass Kickin', right? That has the line, I love running with a two-bit whore. I love snorting someone else's blow. You know, I mean, you gotta love these guys. I mean, they are exactly the kind of band that I wish there were more bands of. Like I said when I was reviewing the 91 album, these are the guys that are going to fight the power. They're going to stick it to the man. They're going to tell you how it is. They're not going to pull any punches. And then they're going to talk about, hey, I want to go get laid. You know, finally somebody is saying it how it should be said, you know. So they got that nice balance in there. Punk and Belligerent was the big song on here. They do kind of take on some characters in this, you know, they just want to drink and party and get drunk and belligerent and punk and belligerent. But they also have the very, very political, very specific. They don't take on so much specific topics as they did in the first one. This one is more like specific groups. Like there's a song called The Party that takes on a particular political party, which I think a lot of rock bands are not going to do these days because everything is so divided. You're going to lose half the audience by doing that. But back in 1992, you know, they still felt like they could do that, tackle in a specific political party with their absolute specifics and not afraid to do it. If you don't like it, you can turn it off or not buy it or whatever, but crank it up if you do. This is, I just wish there was more music like this. You got to go all the way back 30 years. To hear something like that. And a lot of it, you know, even though it's decades old, unfortunately still the problems, still reigning very true today. So, if you have not heard Warrior Soul, I would start with this one, but then, you know, don't just let them drift off. You know, definitely also check out Salutation from the Ghetto Nation. Crank it up, political stuff, socking it to the man, but also a party hard rock attitude. In 1992, James, the band James, came out with their fourth album called Seven, which is kind of confusing. I always thought that they had 6 albums before this and went looking for them and could only find like 3. So that was a wild goose chase. Anyway, Tim Booth is their lead singer, not James. And this was a great CD. This was a guy that I used to work with at Blockbuster Video turned me on to this. And I thought it was pretty great when I was first listening to this back in 1992. I never really heard them on the radio. I think I saw maybe a video for the first song, Born of Frustration, like maybe 3 or 4 times on MTV. That was about it. So I felt like this was my little secret band that only I and the guy that, turned me on to them knew about. And, in the U.S. anyway. This is a UK outfit. So I guess they were much bigger in England than they were here. But pretty cool stuff. It's got a muted trumpet in it. So, we can't have nice things because that guy's on here through most of the songs. But it's all right. It's kind of in the background. It works actually in a couple of songs, like Don't Wait That Long. That's a great song with this booming bass in it out of nowhere. Everything was about the bass in the early 90s. But yeah, Don't Wait That Long, kind of a sad song, kind of a, got the little muted horn going on, got the backup singers coming in, so it's kind of a change on here. A Mother is like a 2.5 minute long anti-war song that starts off with this like, really heartfelt expression. This war's a motherfucker. It's like, okay. Bring a Gun, that's okay. The second and third song, I always skipped over. Ring the Bells and Sound. Went right to Bring a Gun, Mother, Don't Wait That Long, and Next Lover was always pretty good too. You know, it's a song that just starts off, you know, and it just builds and builds and builds and builds, and the sound, you know, that fills and fills. So good stuff here from James. Kind of a pop band, definitely. Yeah, the Born of Frustration song where he just, the lead singer, Tim Booth, just goes manic and starts this, woo, 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 woo. It's you know, kind of sets the tone, and then the rest of the CD's kind of more settled down than that. You know, this is great, pretty much all the way through. Like I said, there's a couple skip over tracks, but I got to knock it down a few notches for one of the dumbest lyrics. And it's in the very first song, Born of Frustration, and he repeats it like 3 or 4 times. And it's, stop, stop, stop talking about who's to blame, and start talking about how to change. Stop pointing finger. You know, no, no. We're going to keep talking about who's to blame. We're going to keep pointing fingers because that's how you make a change. I never liked that line. And it's not like it's their line. I mean, I've heard that. Now's not the time for pointing fingers. Yes, it is. There's always time for pointing fingers. You want to solve a problem, you figure out what caused the problem, and then you'll solve the problem. You keep it from happening again. That's how it works. You know, the person that's going around going, now's not the time for pointing fingers, it's probably their fault. Yeah. Try that with the police sometime. Yeah, we saw you stab that guy 6 times. You're standing there with a bloody knife. Well, officer, now's not the time for pointing fingers. We've got to solve the problem of people getting stabbed all the time. We don't need to talk about who's to blame. Anyway, James 7. This was right before they blew up big with that Laid song, which is great. Like 2 minutes and 10 seconds of pure joy. Love that song, but that's on the next album. So, you know what? Maybe if I do a 1993-94 video, maybe I'll mention that album. In 1992, the band Shudder To Think released their final independent album before they moved to Epic, and that album was called Get Your Goat. And when you see that this is on Discord Records, you're probably expecting something a little more punkish, a little harder, you know, some indie rock cranked up. And, well, the music is, you know, it's got guitars in it, but it's the vocals that are like, wasn't expecting that. And I remember the first time I heard these guys, I was like, wow, this is completely different. The vocalist sings in this sort of childlike, you know, really high-pitched tone, and then, but the lyrics are just like wildly, sometimes unsettling. I mean, they're just, some of them are bizarre, but some of them are creepy. Like I said, unsettling. You got a girl with traffic in her hair going, where's my mom? Where's my mom? You know, it's like, I don't know what's going on in these songs, a lot of them, because it's a lot of the same lines just keep getting repeated, and they're just the lines that really capture your imagination and make you wonder what exactly in the world is going on here. There's another one about dip your cloth in blood and paint your horse's hide with it. Stick a fish in a tattoo gun and see what color comes out. There's another song called White Page, all about we're just sitting still on the roof. Someday I'll teach you to fly. You know, there's wet concrete down there. It's like, this dude's going to push somebody off the roof. You know, it's such a natural thing to do, to learn how to fly while you're sitting on a roof. And there's the wet concrete down there. Yeah, he's definitely going to he's definitely pushing somebody off a roof here. Another song is called Drop Baby. So maybe he's talking to a baby that he's just going to throw off the roof. I don't know. This like I said, some creepy vocals, or creepy lyrics, and the vocals are up here in this kind of lilting, like childlike kind of thing. And it really is different. Shudder to Think. I know they kind of mainstreamed it up a little bit when they moved to Epic. But this is quite a listen, and I don't know too much else that's like this for an entire album. Now, some albums of, you know, creepy, you know, Alice Cooper or something will have some sort of one track on there where they're playing the role of like a little kid, and they're creepy little kid or whatever, doing crazy stuff. But this one, it's the whole album. Not too creepy. It doesn't get into like horror type stuff, but it is kind of just a little unsettling. So you might want to check this out. Get Your Goat. From Shudder To Think. I shudder to think what some of these songs are actually about. Now, when I've talked about listening to Sade before, I've mentioned hearing her and getting more of a tropical vibe from her. A nice sunny day, or maybe something out, and like you're on vacation, she can take you to the Caribbean or something like that when you're still in your own house. But this time, when I revisited the 1992 album Love Deluxe, it actually was doing this outside. So I realized that Sade actually works in a snowstorm as well. She just brings that warmth with her music. And Love Deluxe, one of the better albums. And this one just really works all the way through. She sets the mood, she's got the tone, she's got the great songs, the great musicians, and it all sounds natural. There's not a lot of like fake like drum looping and stuff like that would be on the Lovers Rock album. I'm not a big fan of that album at all. I definitely prefer this one. It sounds so real, so authentic, and like I said, works obviously in a lot of different settings, even looking out the window to something like this. So yeah, Sade's Love Deluxe. Always liked this album, and great to revisit this again. It's got this new vinyl reissue that sounds great. No Ordinary Love, that was the big song on here. That kicks it off. Every time I hear that, to this day, I still think of Sharon Stone spying on people with security cameras. But yeah, lots of other great songs on here. It just kind of flows together. There's nothing that really stands out and like, oh wow, this is my favorite. You know, they're all just kind of in the same vein. There is the song Like a Tattoo where she pulls out a gun. So that's a little jarring from Sade. But yeah, this works whether you're watching a winter snowfall, whether you're in the tropics, whether you want to be in the tropics, where it's a sunshine day, whether you're sitting back with your latte or your wine glass. I'm not really into wine, so that doesn't really work for me. This makes a great love-making album, so I'm told. You know, if you just want to have some nice sex, a lot of people are doing that to Sade. It's a certain kind of sex, though. It's a lot of the foreplay and the, you know, slow grind, and you hear a lot of like, ooh, and oh, not so deep, the enchiladas. You know, it's that kind of thing. So, but like a good wine though, I suggest if you're going to do that, the Sade, you need to pair it with something. And a good pairing with this, use this for the foreplay, and then you want to go right into White Snake when it's time to go to Pound Town. Now that's a good pairing right there. Sade Love Deluxe with White Snake's self-titled 1987 album. That way you get that in the still of the night, I hear the wolf howl, honey. You know, that's my suggestion, but you do what you want. But yeah, Sade Love Deluxe from 1992, still a great album all the way through, one of her best, and really sets a mood, sets a tone. But I realized it works in all kinds of settings, actually. All right, I can finally show some vinyl again. The band is Sleep. The album is Sleep's Holy Mountain, their debut. This is full-on stoner rock. These guys on the forefront of that, and they really put the stoner in stoner rock. Sometimes it's more about a sound, like a lot of kind of Black Sabbath-inspired, kind of low growling guitar riffs with a lot of bass on there to shake that bong water, like I mentioned. Sometimes it's more about lyrics, all about weed and whatever. Sometimes it's about, you know, the artwork, like marijuana leaves all over the place and full on taking some tokes on the back cover with the band. Originally got, acquainted with this on CD in college. Got the vinyl a lot later on. This is the expanded dynamic range version. I wish I would have known that when I got it. But yeah, so these guys full on the Black Sabbath sound. Let's just be honest here. They got the riffs, they got the sound. It sounds like a Black Sabbath tribute band. You know, like sometimes those tribute bands, when you see them at the bar or whatever, or at the club, they're playing, right? And then they're playing all the band's classics that they're paying tribute to. And then all of a sudden they'll be like, all right, here's one of our own songs. And it'll be a song that sounds just like that band. This is a whole album of that. Dragonaut instead of Supernaut. It's Dragonaut that starts this. It sounds like they're marching along to the stoner rock. The Druid is next. The Druid is kind of a longer piece. At the end of it, they're done trying to sound like Black Sabbath, and they just go right into a Black Sabbath riff. I believe it's the one from Electric Funeral that I'm hearing in that. But that's the fun thing you can do with this album. You can listen to the different tracks on here and be like, oh, that kind of sounds like that song. It kind of sounds like that song. But they do have their own thing going on, and they keep it going through the entire album. It even provides lyrics for you. But yeah, they keep it going through the entire album. Great stoner rock stuff. These guys used to get compared a lot to Caius, but I think the differences are pretty evident between these guys and Caius. These guys have the full on, like they had a song called The Druid. You know, they got Holy Mountain and Evil Gypsy and things like that. Where Caius was more kind of could be a little bit more silly, I guess, a little more like juvenile in places. These guys don't do that. These guys a lot more explicit about the weed. You know, they got, like I said, the artwork here. They got a song called "Some Grass." You know, so they're going more in that direction. Caius is over here more just kind of having more of fun and kind of irreverent, I guess you would call Caius. So they do have some differences on here. But yeah, this is a great album, especially if you really love the Black Sabbath stuff and the early, you know, kind of deep guitar riffs that just shake the whole room, you know. Throw this on, you will love this. This is actually, from what I understand, the band's demo. They just sent it to Earache, who was huge at the time, the label Earache. And Earache didn't bother to go, oh yeah, come on the studio and we'll do these songs and make them, you know, get you a producer or whatever. No, they just released the demo, basically. And so by the time this was all over and out and everything, I think these guys had broken up. So when I was in college, we had this CD. I remember going like, who are these guys? Because they didn't sound like 1992 at the time. You know, of course, this sounds a lot more like the 90s, but these guys were on the forefront. So when it was first out, there wasn't really a lot else besides kind of Caius and maybe one other band or, you know, Sativa Love Box or something that didn't sound like this. And so I remember asking around, like, who is this band? Like, and no one knew anything about them. And it was probably because they had pretty much already broken up at that point. So they did obviously get back together later on, come out with, you know, Dope Smoker with the whole like album sides of music. And so, yeah, but that was first, different tracks on there, but all very much in the same lane. If you hear track one, you're like, this is not for me, for whatever reason, don't bother listening to the whole thing because it's pretty much all right down that lane. Stoner rock pioneers, the band Sleep. PJ Harvey released her debut called Dry in 1992. Now, first time I ever heard PJ Harvey, she just really captured my attention and my imagination, and but that was the following album called Rid of Me, so I had to actually do some backtracking to hear this one. But great stuff on this one. Not quite as way out, not quite as experimental, as intense as Rid of Me, but this one is a great debut nonetheless from PJ Harvey. And a lot of the characteristics that you could expect on a lot of her albums, I mean, they start right here. From the very first track, she sounds a little bit vulnerable in Oh My Lover. She's talking about, you know, please don't go. You can have both of us. You can have me and her. You know, so it's kind of like that desperate kind of situation where, you know, I'll do anything for you. Please don't leave. You can even have the two of us. And so she's willing to have a triad, apparently, just to keep the lover going around. But yeah, so you have that, and then she's right into being in control, and then she's vulnerable again. So it's this roller coaster of situations and emotions from PJ Harvey and Dry. A song on here called Sheila Nagig, where, you know, she's expressing how she has her woman-bearing hips, and she has this, and she has that, and she has her dirty pillows, and you will just love all of this. But it doesn't sound like she's bragging too much. It doesn't sound like she's one of these pop stars that are talking about her big booty and all that kind of stuff. She's basically, again, sounding desperate, sounding very vulnerable, and the whole line about dirty pillows. Is that a Carrie reference? That's the only other time I've ever heard somebody call breasts dirty pillows. But the guy wants her to keep her dirty pillows away and go wash those breasts. That's what the actual lyrics in the song. But yeah, and another lyric is put money in my idle hole. Don't do that with money. That's just some advice. If some people take lyrics very literally and want to behave in the same manner as their rock and roll idols, don't put money in your idle hole. You don't know where that money's been. You don't want to put money anywhere other than your hand and your pocket, and then maybe give it to the cashier. And if you thought, you know, being a cashier, if you thought people taking money out of their breasts and handing it to you in their sweaty like armpit or wherever they're keeping their dollar bill or what, imagine somebody pulling a couple of ones out of their idle hole and handing it to you. Would you accept money like that, cashiers? Just leave the answer in the comments. But yeah, PJ Harvey's debut, very interesting, very engaging. And you've got all of this very much alternative rock kind of ethos going on. But you also have pretty catchy hooks. You got pretty much a pop sensibilities in some of the songs. Tracks like Happy and Bleeding with its somewhat aggressive lyrics has a nice little guitar lick in there, you know. So, you know, you have all of that going on in this debut. Like I said, her next one is where I was introduced to her. More intense, more way out. heavier sound, but this one is great as well. PJ Harvey, her debut, Dry. I have got to, I mean, I lost track of PJ Harvey over the years. She put out that one song that I did not like at all about the little fish in the water, and then I kind of started losing interest. But I realize now that that album, that song, there's much better songs on that album. So, yeah, I've got to check out some more PJ Harvey from later on. So we've broken into the teens, leaving you with number 19 on this ranking of 215 albums from the year 1992. I'm Robert Fithen. Thanks again so much for watching. I know when I did my 1991 ranking, it was no surprise to me what was going to be number one. The number one album, I pretty much knew what it was going to be the whole time. And, you know, unless something I wasn't aware of, you know, some album that I really didn't know about that I was listening to really blew my mind, absolutely. I pretty much figured, okay, this is going to be number one, I know that. But for 1992, I wasn't really sure. I really didn't have a definitive number one. This is absolutely it. I know that going in. So it was kind of a surprise to me. And we are definitely getting to that, as well as number 2 and 3 and 7 and 11. 15, just 2 videos left, and then we'll wrap the whole thing up. And again, thank you so much for continuing with me on this journey. I'm Robert Fithen. Hopefully I'll talk to you again in the next one.